all the worthy speakers and participants who have come today and those virtually joining us to express support and solidarity with the people of Jammu and Kashmir who had been subjected to egregious human rights violations in the struggle to their right to self determination. To begin with, I would like to request Qari Mahmoodul Hassan for recitation of verse from Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا لقيتم فئة فاثبتوا واذكروا الله كثيرا لعلكم تفلحون. وأطيعوا الله ورسوله ولا تنازعوا فتفشلوا وتذهب ريحكم واصبروا إن الله مع الصابرين. ولا تهنوا ولا تحزنوا وأنتم الأعلون وأنتم الأعلون إن كنتم مؤمنين. صدق الله العظيم. معزز خواتین و حضرات، تلاوت کردہ آیات طیبات کا ترجمہ بھی سماعت فرمائیں۔ اللہ کے نام سے شروع کرتا ہوں جو بہت ہی مہربان والا ہے۔ اے ایمان والو، جب جنگ آزما ہو تم پر کسی لشکر سے تو ثابت قدم تم کامیاب ہو جاؤ اور اطاعت ताला की और और हो जाओगे और उखड़ हर
Thank you. Moving on, I would now request Mr. Khalid Mahmood, Community Welfare Councillor, to read out the messages of Excellencies, the President and the Prime Minister of Pakistan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Message from Dr. Arif Alvi, President of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, on the occasion of Kashmir Solidarity Day. Today, we pay tribute to the unparalleled commitment of the Kashmiris for the attainment of their legitimate right to self-determination. The entire Pakistani nation stands with Kashmiris. It is our firm belief that the Kashmiris will succeed in their valiant struggle to secure freedom from oppression and illegal occupation. The Jammu and Kashmir dispute is one of the oldest items on the agenda of the United Nations Security Council. The dispute remains unresolved due to India's obstinate refusal to honor its commitments, human rights, and international laws. For more than 7 decades, it has been a battle of hope against overwhelming odds, of courage and fear, and of sacrifice against tyranny. But through all of it, the Kashmiri people have persisted and stood firm in the face of continuing Indian campaign of brutalization, which has used every inhuman tactics and draconian laws to perpetuate the illegal occupation and Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. India's illegal and unilateral actions of 5 August 2019 were in blatant violation of international law, including UN Charter, 4th Geneva Convention, and the relevant UN Security Council resolutions, which stipulate that the final disposition of the state of Jammu and Kashmir will be made in accordance with the will of the people expressed through the democratic method of a free and impartial plebiscite conducted under the auspices of the United Nations. These Indian actions have caused serious damage to peace efforts in an already volatile region. India's refusal to grant right to self-determination has serious implications for South Asia and even beyond. Pakistan reiterates its call on the international community to take practical steps to hold India accountable for its gross and widespread human rights violations in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. A just and lasting solution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute in accordance with international legitimacy is the only way to ensure durable peace and development in the region. Ladies and gentlemen, now I come over to the message from Imran Khan, Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Today, the people of Pakistan are commemorating the Kashmir Solidarity Day to reaffirm our unwavering support to the Kashmiris in their just struggle for their inalienable right to self-determination. The human rights situation in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir has continued to worsen following India's illegal and unilateral actions of 5 August 2019. The inhuman military siege, which has remained in place for almost 2.5 years now, has resulted in the martyrdom of hundreds of Kashmiris. Indian occupation forces continue to use brute force indiscriminately against Kashmiri men, women, children, and the elderly. The Kashmiri youth has been practically targeted in their campaign of unabated repression. The most oppressive illustration of this are the use of pellet guns and destruction of entire neighborhoods, including collective punishments on communities in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. India has unleashed the worst form of state terrorism to break the will of the Kashmiri people and crush their legitimate struggle. The whole Indian state machinery is involved in these unspeakable crimes against humanity. The over 900,000 Indian occupation forces continue to terrorize the Kashmiris through an assault on their distinct identity and culture through illegal demographic changes and economic marginalization. The pattern of ongoing atrocities in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir reflects the anti-peace and anti-Muslim Hindutva agenda of extremist RSS BJP dispensation. India has not reciprocated Pakistan's efforts for peace and stability. India's illegal and unilateral steps were rejected by Pakistan and the Kashmiris. As an ambassador of Kashmir, I reassure that Pakistan will continue to extend all possible support to our Kashmiri brothers and sisters. It is time for the international community to make India accountable for its heinous crimes in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and to work towards a just and peaceful settlement of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute in accordance with the United Nations Security Council resolutions and the wishes of the Kashmiri people. I thank you all.
Thank you very much. We are very grateful to have with us Mr. Frode Jakobsen, Member of Parliament from the Labour Party. I would request sir to share your views, please.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to join this meeting about the Kashmir Solidarity Day. My name is Frode Jakobsen. I'm the Member of Parliament from the Labour Party. I'm also Chairman for the Labour Party here in Oslo. I have my speech in Norwegian, so I hope you can live with that today. Det en stor ære for meg å være her og markere solidaritetsdagen for Kashmir sammen med dere her på den vakre pakistanske ambassaden i Norge. Kashmir jo kjent for sitt vakre landskap. Jeg har aldri vært der selv, men det sies at det minner mye om norsk natur. Så jeg håper kanskje en dag å få reist dit, og hvem vet, kanskje noen av dere kan følge meg dit. Samtidig dalen også mest kjent for sin anspente geografiske plassering mellom de to store atommakter, Pakistan og India. Kashmir-konflikten den verdens lengst varende og farligste konflikten som har krevd mange uskyldige liv. Vi hørte på hilsener fra president og statsministeren i Pakistan om historien fra 1947 og fremover. Majoriteten av befolkningen er muslimer, og nå står jeg sammen med dere og krever en slutt på konflikten. For meg handler ikke konflikten om Pakistan eller India. Det handler om å respektere menneskerettighetene. Det handler om retten til selvbestemmelse. Vi hørte i hilsene vi fikk lest opp om human rights og international laws. Det er det vi krever handling for å få til. I Norge tar vi vårt demokrati og retten til å ytre oss og leve frie liv som en selvfølge. Internasjonal solidaritet og kampen mot brudd på menneskerettighetene har alltid vært en viktig del av Arbeiderpartiets ideologi og politikk. I alle konflikter er det 2 eller flere parter som er involvert. Alle involverte har et selvstendig ansvar for å arbeide for fred og forsoning. Og det er for meg helt uforståelig at verdens største demokrati, ledet av en hindu-nasjonalistisk regjering, i 2019 fjernet grunnlovsparagrafen 370 fra sin grunnlov. Og med et pennestrøk var kasjmirernes fratatt sin egen frihet og selvstyre. Denne paragrafen har vært et helt avgjørende premiss for en varig og fredelig løsning på Kashmir-konflikten. Fordi den paragrafen har vært kasjmirernes håp om en bedre og lysere framtid. Dette er brudd på menneskerettighetene. International laws blir ikke fulgt. Det må vi fordømme. Og det er ekstra sørgelig at regjeringen av India har fulgt opp dette med å innføre portforbud i hele Kashmirdalen, uten forbindelse til resten av verden. Forsyninger med mat og medisin lider og kommer ikke fram. Selv med mindre lettelser siden 2019, men fortsatt lever folk med et portforbud og tilstedeværelsen av 800 000 militære. Kjære dere, situasjonen er absurd og uakseptabel. Og mine venner, jeg er glad for å representere et parti hvor internasjonal solidaritet og menneskerettigheter spiller en sentral rolle i vår politikk. Menneskerettigheter og retten til selvstyre og bestemmelse skal triumfere overalt. Arbeiderpartiet har stått sammen med palestinerne for deres rett til selvstyre og selvbestemmelse. Kashmirernes sak er ikke noe unntak for oss. Men Norge er, dessverre, et lite land som alene har liten påvirkningskraft. Men derfor er det viktig at vi følger opp saken i FN og tar alle initiativ som er mulig gjennom de formelle kanaler med mål om å få partene til forhandlingsbordet. Jeg forstår at det er vanskelig så lenge Indias regjering ikke ønsker involvering fra det internasjonale samfunnet, men vi kan aldri gi oss. Det skal ikke bety at vi fraviker vår plikt til å si tydelig fra og bruke enhver anledning til å arbeide for å skape fred i regionen og i Kashmirdalen. Så vårt standpunkt kan oppsummeres kort og klart. Grunnlovsparagrafen 370 må gjeninnføres, og Indias regjering må leve opp til de demokratiske verdiene ved å respektere menneskerettighetene og gi kasjmirernes rett til deres selvstyre og selvbestemmelse. Så tusen takk for invitasjonen. Tusen takk for den jobben dere gjør med å hele tiden minne oss på den urettferdigheten vi ser, og de uakseptable forhold som vi ser. Denne kampen er ikke bare deres kamp, denne kampen står vi sammen om, og menneskerettigheter og internasjonal lov må følges og skal seire. Så tusen takk, og lykke til videre med arrangementet.
Thank you so much, sir. Now it's time to witness a short documentary highlighting human rights violations in Kashmir.
Every year, on 5th February, Pakistanis and Kashmiris from Azad Kashmir and all over the world celebrate Kashmir Day to show solidarity with their Kashmiri brothers. The purpose of celebrating this day is to remind United Nations and the international community that why are the promises made to Kashmiris on the biggest platform of the world still unfulfilled? On this day, Pakistanis and Kashmiris form a human chain to convey a message to the whole world that the Pakistanis and Kashmiris living on both sides of the line of control are one and no power on earth can separate them. The Indian occupation of Kashmir is not only illegal but also against nature, as 80% of the Kashmiri population is Muslim, and according to the rules of division of subcontinent, it was natural for Kashmir to be part of Pakistan. But owing to the conspiracy of Sir Ratcliffe, the Muslim majority area of Gurdaspur was included in India, and this is how India was granted ground access to enter and occupy Kashmir. This was confessed by Kapil Sibal, the Congress member and the member of Indian Parliament during an assembly meeting while being stopped by the Speaker Assembly and other parliamentarians.
इतिहास की बात है कि हम समझते हैं कि पंडित नेहरू जी की वजह से कश्मीर हमारे पक्ष में आया। अगर रैटक्लिफ अवार्ड न होता, गुरदासपुर हमारे पास नहीं दिया जाता और जो मेजॉरिटी का प्रिंसिपल था उसको अपनाया जाता तो शायद कश्मीर हमारे पास कभी आता ही नहीं। लेकिन असलियत तो ये है कि रैटक्लिफ अवार्ड के द्वारा गुरदासपुर हमें मिला, वो लिंकेज हमें मिला और उसकी वजह से जम्मू कश्मीर में हमारे पक्ष में आया।
Kapil Sibal's statement itself is an acceptance of the fact that Kashmir was a natural part of Pakistan and India had illegally occupied it. This is the reason why Kashmiris want freedom from India and accession with Pakistan and have been trying to get freedom from the Indian illegal occupation for the past 73 years. They have been rendering unprecedented sacrifices to get rid of the evil clutches of India. However, India is using every inhuman and unlawful method to keep them enslaved. On August 5th, 2019, Kashmiris were stripped of their identity by revoking Article 370 and a curfew was imposed. All means of traveling and communication, including the internet and mobile service, were cut off. Kashmir was isolated from the rest of the world so that the oppression and violation of human rights happening in Kashmir could be kept hidden from the world. Kashmiri youth, who have been at the forefront of the freedom movement, are the major target of Indian forces of occupation. They are being arrested and martyred in fake encounters. They have been maimed, amputated, and disabled as a consequence of the brutal torture being carried out at the interrogation centers. And more than 10,000 innocent Kashmiris have been disappeared forever. The Kashmiri men and women who raise their voices against the Indian brutality are being oppressed indiscriminately. The pellet gun banned throughout the world is being used on Kashmiris relentlessly. More than 6,500 Kashmiris have been severely injured and about 800 have lost their eyesight due to the excessive and uncontrolled use of this lethal weapon. India has failed to crush the Kashmiri freedom movement despite all its atrocious tactics. Now, on the pretext of counterinsurgency, they are destroying the whole localities by the use of explosives and setting them ablaze, leaving hundreds of Kashmiri families shelterless.
Armed forces there, they have complete impunity. There's a legislation called the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, wherein that the army personnel, whatever they do, they rape, they disappear, they murder, they torture people there randomly, and then they cannot be prosecuted. Government of India is convinced that they can get away with everything, whatever she is doing in Kashmir.
The occupation forces stepped up the genocide of the Kashmiri populace through fake encounters in the name of in courts with so-called terrorists. The increasing acts of state terrorism have further strengthened Kashmiris' belief that their survival is linked with Pakistan. Russell Tribunal on Kashmir, held recently in Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, is a positive development, and it has proved a new hope for Kashmiris. This grassroots initiative is designed to shed light on war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by India and Kashmir.
I can see a lot of similarities between genocide that happened in Bosnia in 1990s and the genocide that happened and that is currently happening in Kashmir.
Russell's tribunal on Kashmir helped expose the genocide in Kashmir and publicly pulled the rug out from the old myths, constructing India as the world's biggest democracy.
The contradiction that India is referred to as the world's largest democracy, while not only recently enshrining Modi's fascism into law with the Citizenship Act, but continuing to maintain the most militarized zone in the world in Kashmir with up to 1 million troops. It's when our global conscience has been sufficiently disturbed that we're able to activate the necessary pressure to stop genocide. Working against us in that regard is that the purveyors of violence, settler colonialism, and ethnic cleansing maintain not just superior military capacity, but the ability to black out, bomb, and cripple the media exposure of those crimes.
Another positive development from Kashmiri's viewpoint in December 2021 was the United Nations General Assembly in New York adopted with consensus a Pakistan-sponsored resolution titled Universal Realization of the Right of the Peoples to Self-Determination, which unequivocally supports the right to self-determination for all peoples under subjugation, alien domination, and foreign occupation, including those of Indian-occupied Kashmir. The adoption of the resolution with consensus has provided the people of Indian-occupied Kashmir a new hope in their just struggle for self-determination and freedom from oppression and occupation. Russell Tribunal and United Nations General Assembly's resolution are the manifestation that Kashmir issue is no more a neglected issue. And time is not far off when India would be compelled to stop gross human rights violations in occupied Jammu and Kashmir and implement UN resolutions by holding a free and fair plebiscite to give the people of Kashmir their inherent right to self-determination.
We are also very grateful for having with us Mr. Guy Lepestad, Chairman Centrum Party. I would sir request you to share your thoughts, please.
Thank you. Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start by thanking His Excellency Abar Amin for this invitation and for me to express Parti Centrum's view on the matter of Kashmir. As you all know, we are a very young party. We were established in 2020, so it's not more than 1 year ago. But this matter regarding Kashmir is one of the most important foreign matters for our party. For those who don't know me, I'm a lawyer by profession, and I advocate human rights cases around Norway and around the world. Therefore, it quickly became important for me to also look into the Kashmir matter regarding Parti Centrum's program and Parti Centrum's work. I will not use my time to educate you on this matter, as I'm certain that there are far more knowledgeable people present in this room on Kashmir and its history. But I will talk about why it's out of utmost importance that politicians in Norway educate themselves on this 70 years old war that has been going on. Too few politicians in Norway talk about these matters, and I think that politicians in Norway need more education and more knowledge about these important matters. Internationally, Norway is known to have a proud history in peacekeeping and stabilization war zones. And yet few fellow politicians talk about this conflict in the parliament. And even lesser fellow Norwegians know about these important matters. It's not in the news, it's not in the televisions, it's not in the papers. A seat in the Security Council provides mandates for peacekeeping operations, political missions, and sanctions regimes. Norway specifically participates in shaping discussions and statements made by the world's most important body in order to safeguard international peace and security in the UN. In my opinion, we should therefore use our seat in the Security Council in the UN to talk about the atrocities that are prevailed upon the people in Kashmir, the human rights and the killing that's going on. We are living in a time of increasing geopolitical conflict. The Kashmir conflict is one of the world's most heated and reacted conflicts. The world is on the sidelines watching and observing. Surely more can be done. We know that human rights have been strengthened to Norway's vote in the Security Council. It's therefore important that Norway use its voice to initiate dialogue, humanitarian aid, and observations in Kashmir, so that Norway also in this conflict can appear as a peace-making nation. Recently, we got a new government here in Norway, and the human rights section of their political platform, they don't, as far as I can see, not mention Kashmir, along with countries that are in crisis. The Kashmir conflict, with its complex picture, should, in my opinion, have been a focus issue for the new government, and I hope that it will be so. In recent days, we have seen a visit of a delegation from Afghanistan. We have seen what Norway's current government is able to put in place in terms of peace and human rights issues. Norway has a proud history as host nation in major international peace negotiations, and the Kashmir conflict should therefore not be an exception. We in Partiet Sentrum will advocate that the Kashmir conflict be addressed and assist in accordance with UN human rights principles. We will continue to raise the Kashmir issue in various forums, in addition to the fact that Kashmir has been adopted in the party program. We have, in fact, included Kashmir along with Myanmar as some of the most heavily conflict zones that need political will and power to get a solution for the people in Kashmir. We need the nations, India and Pakistan, to come to the dialogue table. I promise that Partiet Sentrum will speak loud and clear about Kashmir on every forum that we talk about human rights. And we are determined to focus on the Kashmir people, human rights matter in the future. And I will do as an advocate and a human rights advocate as best as I can to talk about the suffering that the Kashmir people are living through. Thank you so much.
Moving on, I would now request Mr. Khalid Mahmood, former Member of Parliament from the Labour Party, to share his thoughts, please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Your Excellency, distinguished audience, and dear friends of Kashmir. Solidarity Day is observed worldwide annually to express solidarity with the suppressed people of Jammu and Kashmir. On this day, we reiterate our sincere, unconditional support for the besieged Kashmiri people in their just struggle for the right of self-determination, promised to them by the international community and endorsed by the United Nations Security Council through the unopposed resolutions. The day is also observed to pay tribute to the courageous Kashmiris for their resilience against one of the world's largest and cruel regime, which have illegally occupied their beloved land for 3/4 of the century. We, the independent people of world and the government of Pakistan, are accomplishing the obligations anchored in the United Nations Charter of Human Rights, which is endorsed by the entire international community. A sovereign state and the people of international community are bound to oppose the violation of human rights and brutal suppression of the people of Jammu and Kashmir carried out by the state of India. There is no question that this should have been the core duty of the freedom-loving people of the world, who enjoys the benefits of the principles of international human rights guaranteed by the United Nations. Along with this understanding, the people of Pakistan feel that they are left with no other options because they take it as a duty as a human being, and since the government of Pakistan is co-signatory of the promise of self-determination made to the people of Jammu and Kashmir by the international community. Secondly, the abuses of the human rights are openly taking place in Kashmir, which is situated at the doorsteps of Pakistan. Even if Pakistanis tried, they could not be oblivious to the tragedy displayed at their neighborhood. The people of Azad Kashmir can even smell the smoke of the shotguns fired on the innocent people of Jammu and Kashmir, and they can hear every day the screaming of the women and children while tortured by the Indian army. There is a difference between reading the brutality of the Indian state against the people of Jammu and Kashmir in the newspaper and witnessing it with your own eyes. On the day of today, we are gathered to convey our message to the people of Jammu and Kashmir that they are not forgotten and they are not left alone, and they will never be left alone in their just struggle for the right of self-determination. Solidarity Day with the people of Kashmir is at the same time an effort to awake the dormant conscience of the world community. We want to remind the world and ask them to fulfill their responsibility as human beings to raise their voice to bring an end to the agony of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. By doing so, they will also, and the world community, can save the credibility of the International Charter of Human Rights. Dear audience, the majority of the world nations should have a very bad conscience for letting their strategical and tactical positioning make them look away from the severe violation of the human rights carried out by the Indian security forces in Jammu and Kashmir. As a world citizen, regardless of ethnicity,
nationality, and religious affiliation, we are obligated to raise our voices against the violation of human rights and stand up against the injustice. We witness daily the voices raised against the injustice in the world by the human rights organizations and make our due contribution in this regard. But I must admit that I feel pain witnessing the dichotomy when it comes to the cause of Kashmiris. The unresolved issue of the Jammu and Kashmir is the oldest point on the agenda of the United Nations, which seek the attention of the entire world. This unresolved issue has caused death to the hundred thousands of the innocent people of Kashmir, and as many have been severely injured and have been paralyzed for the lifetime. This has been going on for 75 years. The third generation of the people of Jammu and Kashmir have been facing this inhuman situation due to the occupation of their state. A generation who was born and have spent their childhood and grown up under the inhuman siege of the Indian army and daily facing the barrels of deadly arms pointing on them. India has been using all means of suppression towards the people of Jammu and Kashmir, from using the military gunpower, cracking down on freedom of expression, curtailing access to the information, banning peaceful protests, arbitrary detentions, torture and ill treatment of detainees, brutal action against journalists, enforced disappearances of the Kashmiris, and not allowing the international human rights organizations access to the occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Despite all the cruelty, the commitment and the determination of Kashmiri is unshaken. In return of aggravated brutality by Indian security forces, the Kashmiris have emerged more courageous. Not a single leader of Kashmiris, none of an imprisoned innocent, neither injured child, not even widow have uttered a single word except the slogan of self-determination, Leke Rahenge Azadi. That should make India rethink its inhuman conduct in Kashmir. It's about the time to realize the ground reality, see the writing on the wall. Three generations of Indian leadership from Nehru, Gandhi, Indira, and now, represented by, worst of all, Mr. Modi, have used all kind of available wishes, tools, and tactics to force its self-imagined reality without any success. Take the courage to face the actual reality, and that is the one which is carried on by the leaders and the people of Kashmir. And that is this implementation of right of self-determination. Not a single Kashmiri have since 1947 compromised on it. Even those who chose the path of negotiations and with Indian leadership and trusted on their promises have rejected the latest move by the state of India regarding the annexation of Kashmir illegally into India by removing the Article 370. The entire Kashmiri leadership, representing the people of Jammu and Kashmir, stands united and firmly behind the demand of right to self-determination, and have conveyed clearly that this is the only key to unlock the barrier on the road of peace and prosperity in South Asia and entire region. Dear audience, let me, in the end, express my humble appreciation for the commendable conduct of Pakistan in this regard. Pakistan has steadfastly and regardless of price paid and bearing the burden of all kinds, supported the people of Kashmir in their struggle for the right of self-determination. Dear friends, be aware of the defaming of Pakistan's role. It's part of a game to make it look that Pakistan is fighting a geographical war for the land of Kashmir. It is not a fight for the peace of land. It is struggle for one of the basic human rights and right of self-determination to decide its own future. Hundreds of nations worldwide have decided their own destiny by enjoying this self determination right. But the 9 million people of Kashmir are deprived of it. Kashmir dispute is not the square meters land. It is about the fate of 9 million people who want to decide their own future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable views. Now, I would request Mr. Mahmood Ahmed, City Councillor from the Socialist Left Party, to say a few words for solidarity with the people of Jammu and Kashmir.
His Excellency and dear audience, I could speak in Norwegian as well, but I will prefer to talk in English. So in this regard, I'm representing Socialist Left Party and also the International Board of Committee in Socialist Left. So first of all, there is no single answer to this issue and dispute. We all agree on that. Secondly, I will just say some few words. It's 3 points in my mind. First of all, I have raised, and I know that many others in socialist left also has raised this matter to Aydın Lysbakken. I have done that. I can assure you that. And I know that this matter is severe, and Socialist Left Party has since establishment been a peace party. Everybody knows that. We are against also the atom war. We're against also NATO. That's another topic, but we are a peace party. Okay, so how can we work together when it comes to the Kashmir process? I think that we need to both work internally, both work externally, and work together. Internally, within different political parties, like also my other different political colleagues have said, and highlight and ensure and envision that Kashmir topic is as relevant as Myanmar, as Palestine, as Afghanistan conflicts, and so forth. Because there are a lot of disputes and conflicts and wars around the globe. But we, Norwegians, as a peace-loving country, needs to interact with all, not some of us. And then what we can do externally is that we have a seat in UN, and that we should use, not just for our matters and our political gains, which we actually want to do, because we know that, sorry to say that, but I don't think that sitting government has an own foreign policy, because this matter is about foreign policy. And yeah, we are a big country. We need to have our alliances, but we need to also stand and speak for human rights, and not just about the resources and so stuff. So we need to raise the voice. And the third thing, I think that since both parties have their interest, we need to do that on neutral ground. This has to be a neutral peace process, like Norway did with Colombia, like Norway has done with other I know in other countries as well. We need to take that lead, and I know that Norway can take that lead. It's just about highlighting that and involving the right instances. So that was all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Moving on, I will now request Ms. Mishal Malik, Chairperson, Peace and Culture Organization, who is joining us virtually to share her views. Please unmute yourself.
Greetings, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. And I'm very grateful to all of you for organizing this function regarding what's happening in Kashmir, especially after 5th of August 2019, abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, when through a latest form of war, a lawfare, the people of Kashmir became stateless with just one signature. and they lost all their legal rights, their economic rights, their political rights, all were snatched from them. And overnight, we became refugees on our own land. And right now, also, the growing colonialization of India in a disputed territory, they have granted 5 million domicile certificates to non-Kashmiris and almost half the total indigenous population. So I know a lot of people participating or listeners in this function are well aware of what's happening over there. And Norway is a country which is very sensitive towards the human rights. And I've also visited Oslo a few years back when Ambassador Rifat was there, and I was invited by the Oslo Center, Mr. Bondewerk and Mr. Amir. And I felt really amazed that they had a lot of knowledge about the war crimes being committed there. But coming to the main issue right now, because when we talk about Kashmir, we definitely talk about, the UN resolutions or the right to self-determination, which is a right of every human being around the globe. And that's all what we are asking for. We want our identity back. That's what we are struggling for. But the tragedy of the matter is that we have over 10 lakh Indian army sitting there attacking us. And now we have over 5 million Indians who are settling there. They are bulldozing hundreds of homes over there in villages and towns. And they are constructing new Sainik colonies for retired Indian army officers and their families. And they are, selling off land which is illegal in a disputed territory according to Geneva Convention, Geneva Convention 4, and they are selling it off on lease for hundreds of years to Indian business community. And the top tourist resorts are also being snatched. The shrines are also taken in control by India, and the educational quota, the job quotas, all from every angle, India has totally disenfranchised the Kashmiri people. And we saw over the past 74 years almost that many a times there was dialogue for peace between India and Pakistan to settle the issue, the core issue of Kashmir. And there were wars also between India and Pakistan. And the Kashmiri leadership, the Kashmiri people were always they were always in favor of a peaceful dialogue between India and Pakistan. 50 years, my God, that is half a century we gave to bilateralism. And everybody focused on that, but we didn't get any result out of it because each time India would back out or would, start some blame game, because obviously they're the aggressors, they're the occupiers, so they definitely don't want Kashmiris to get any relief. Their main goal, especially during the RSS regime, is Akhand Bharat, and RSS is a terrorist organization involved in numerous terrorist activities in the past, be it Mecca bombings, be it forced conversions of Christians, be it attacking the Dalits, low caste there, and then what they did with the Muslims in Gujarat, and so many other things. And even right now, what is happening over there with the anti-minority bills and everything, and CAA. So in this kind of ground situation, you can't even expect any sane kind of dialogue because they have superseded, they have broken all international norms, UN resolutions, international law, humanitarian law, everything has been violated. And they are committing, ladies and gentlemen, genocide, which is the highest crime in the world, in an unarmed, defenseless, powerless nation. Imagine being in such a vulnerable situation. When you compare it with the Palestinians, there are a lot of commonalities, but no, a few things the world doesn't know much about Kashmir the way they know more about Palestine, because Palestinian leaders can travel. If they're not arrested, they can go on. International media can come and do coverage. There are offices of international media, international human rights organizations, fact-finding missions can go there. But over here, nobody can even dream of entering. Or even, the UN MOGIB is not allowed there. Amnesty was attacked there. And this is what's happening. A vehicle of the UN was also attacked at the line of control. So how to go about it? It's a very frustrating situation. And then my own husband, who's one of the top leaders of the peaceful resistance movement, he's locked up in Tihar jail, and not just in a barrack, but in a death cell, a 5 by 7 feet death cell, and he is just, being denied all legal help and all medical care. And as a family, we don't even get the right to speak to him for the past 3 years. I have not heard his voice, and nor has my daughter seen him. We've not seen him for 7.5 years. And this is a situation on ground where the peaceful leadership, the face of the movement, they're also being eliminated, poisoned, beaten up in jail. So how do we go about it? What does India want? And then just 2 days back, an Indian minister of BJP has shocked the world and said that, in 2024, we're going to be capturing Azad Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. So that means the war will escalate. And so the world needs to take charge of the situation, and we need peace builders right now. We need global human rights activists. We need a global campaign by world bodies, by Norway especially. Norway has played a very constructive role in the past in establishing peace ties between hostile countries and sensitive issues. So I believe right now globally, no issue is as sensitive as the Kashmir issue, because we are literally sitting on a nuclear time bomb. And on 27th February 2019, nuclear codes were exchanged between India and Pakistan. So the kind of man you have in power in India, he's fascist, he's radical, and he believes that the more you kill the minorities or innocent Kashmiris or start a war stunt with Pakistan, the more win-win situation it is for him to do. And I feel sorry for the Hindus, the minorities in India. They're so scattered, they're so afraid of the hawks over there, because the hawks are in power and they're just fuming and they're just growling and they're just attacking all those sane voices that are screaming for just a window opening of a secular kind of image of India to the world. So in such situation, when we are so vulnerable and our leadership is also locked up, we are facing economic blockade, communication lockdown, double siege, everything is happening here. And just few days back, the Indian state locked up, issued a curfew or a coup. It was a coup d'etat on the press club in Srinagar. So there's a big lock outside it. Even the local coverage on local levels, not even international level, that too has been taken away by the Kashmiris. And human rights defenders who report about human rights abuse, they're also locked up, sulking in jails, slapped with draconian laws, political leadership being eliminated, and being a very sensitive issue which can endanger international peace and security. And Kashmiris are still following the peaceful political path. And Pakistan has tried its best to have communication with India, but there's a complete deadlock. So I appeal to the UN, to this forum, to the international bodies, to Norway, to play a powerful role in bringing peace in the region. And that can only happen if the Kashmiris are on board. And if that chair is missing of the main representatives, the leadership over there, then I'm afraid that I see a very dark, very gloomy future, not just for the Kashmiris. We might become extinct, but for the region and for the world as well. So we need to take charge. And I have a few suggestions which I would like to share with the respectable audience over here, because I keep in mind empirical evidences regarding the UN, be it the case of East Timor, bifurcation of Sudan, and many other cases which strengthen the case of Kashmir. And recently, we saw two powerful reports coming from the Human Rights Commission of the UN, one in 2018, one in 2019, exposing the war crimes by India. Then we saw a report, strong one by Amnesty International, by the British Parliament, and then a lot of others. But this year first time ever, in this year, January, we saw a legal course being taken by an international organization, Stockwide. It's a law firm. It has issued a report with 2,000 testimonies of victims in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, with all the evidences, photographic evidences, with visuals, with phone call taping of Indian Army officers, and a lot of other proofs of the violence being committed against them. And I have also announced that I'll be giving testimony to them. I will testify before them. and they have filed a complaint in British police station against the sitting army chief and the sitting home minister in India. So India has rejected it, but this is one of the way forward. We want India to be held under legal obligations. So India enjoys being a part of the UNGA, UNSC, UN Human Rights Council as a non-permanent member, but though it is violating all UN mandated obligations, it's a question mark. And why are they not being held accountable? Why aren't defense and economic sanctions being imposed against India for committing the highest crime of genocide? And then UN has in the past also has had ad hoc international criminal tribunals in the case of Rwanda and in the case of Yugoslavia, where we have similar issues, such as the one that I mentioned, of war crimes, of genocide, and many others. So on those angles also, the UN mechanism can be utilized for international criminal tribunals to be established in the same manner for the Kashmiris, to gather, send information about them, to get access over there, to give justice or some kind of legal aid to the victims over there that are left literally on the roads. They're homeless, without any help, without any voice, and they're voiceless right now. So this is one of my suggestions. Second one to the international community is that, please, for God's sake, consider Kashmiris human being. We are not aliens. We are from this planet. And all we are asking for is a right enshrined in the UN resolutions, right to self-determination. This is no rocket science. And for that matter, I appeal to the UN that it's high time Kashmiris should get observer status in the UN, like the Palestinians, and a Kashmir envoy should be nominated by the United Nations, just like the OIC has done. And we don't just want condemnations. We want India to be held accountable for violating Geneva Convention 4 and illegally changing the population or the demography of a disputed territory, which falls under the UN umbrella, and they are changing it so fast and not being held accountable for this systematic genocide that is going on. And we need to make the world realize that whatever India has done, this must be delegitimized. This must not just be condemned on paper, on statements. We welcome that. And then also, at the same time, there's the UN Trusteeship Council, which appoints in disputed territories or where there are struggles or right to self-determination. They could appoint their peacekeeping forces over here. People are jobless. People are homeless right now, and India is building concentration camps for them near the line of control and shifting them there and bulldozing their homes and taking away their property documents, seizing their bank accounts, taking away their jobs, taking away everything from them. And what should they do? What is the maximum that we can do is we can just wear coffins and be protesting one generation after the other. But it is the duty of the international world, because it falls under universal jurisdiction. The common clause, the common Article 3 of Geneva Convention 4, through that as well, and also through Chapter 6 and 7 of the UN, that this can jeopardize global peace and security. And such fascist regimes are destroying the fabric of the region and of the people within India also, and it is not allowing access to the UN MOGIP as well. So we need international observers to go there, fact-finding missions. And the UN must also appoint an inquiry of commission on all these war crimes, and they should send it forward to the chief prosecutor of the ICC, International Criminal Court, to charge India's occupational forces for all these crimes that they are committing. So they need to be held accountable. That is my point of view. And in the end, I'm thankful to all of you for your patience, for listening to me. And I'm asking for help on behalf of my people, that before we are completely eliminated, before we completely, become extinct, because genocide, what more, because we don't have any way to protect us. The only way forward is the world coming to stop India and putting pressure on India and putting them under the radar of the legal obligations. Thank you. Stay blessed.
Thank you, Mrs. Mishal, for joining us virtually and sharing your informative and valuable remarks for solidarity with the people of Kashmir. Now, moving on, I would request Ambassador His Excellency Mr. Babar Amin for the concluding remarks, please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Excellencies, respected ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor for me to thank you for, and all the distinguished speakers on today's seminar who raised their voice in solidarity with the people of Jammu and Kashmir. I would like to thank Honorable Mr. Frode Jacobson of Labour Party MP, Ms. Moshal Hussain Malik, Chairman, Peace and Culture Organization, Mr. Khalid Mahmood, former MP from Labour Party, Mr. Mahmood from Socialist Left Party. Unfortunately, two of our guest speakers today could not join because of being discovered as corona positive just yesterday evening, and one was discovered positive this morning. So our apologies to the participants on their behalf that they could not give their valuable views to this forum today. So I would like to convey regrets on behalf of Mr. Lash Rise and Mr. Peter Ide, both former MPs who could not join us today. I would also like to acknowledge with thanks all the worthy participants who have come here today at the embassy and who are joining us virtually from various Norwegian cities today. Ladies and gentlemen, 5th February is marked every year by Pakistanis, Kashmiris, and global community to express solidarity with the people of Jammu and Kashmir. At the time of independence of Pakistan and India, the overwhelming Muslim majority population of Jammu and Kashmir had wanted to be a part of Pakistan due to their common religious, social, and cultural homogeneity, as well as geographical contiguity with Pakistan. This was also in accordance with the partition plan of British India, as Muslim majority areas were to become part of Pakistan and Hindu majority areas were to go to India. Several valid Security Council resolutions remain unimplemented to date and call for holding plebiscite to allow the people of Jammu and Kashmir to decide their destiny whether to join Pakistan or India. Unfortunately, India illegally occupied a large territory of Jammu and Kashmir using force and denying its people their right to self-determination. Ladies and gentlemen, to maintain its illegal occupation, India had at the outset restored to brutal force massive human rights abuse of Kashmiris, treachery and deceit. An enhanced diabolic program against Kashmiris was launched by BJP RSS regime that took government in India in 2014. That regime itself called the final solution, a well-known term used by Nazis for genocide of Jews during the Second World War. The most capricious part of this program was unfolded on 5th August 2019, when India unilaterally tried to change the status of its illegally occupied territory in Jammu and Kashmir. A siege of 8 million Kashmiris was laid by 1 million Indian troops as abrogation of autonomy and removal of restrictions on demographic changes in the Indian illegally occupied territory was announced. A fresh reign of terror that was unleashed on the hapless Kashmiris further degraded their right to life, human dignity, and honor. The IIOJK was turned into a concentration camp as curfew was clamped down, communications were severed, internet, telephone, and mobile services were shut down. To crush any dissent, political leaders, activists, human rights defenders, students, youth were either abducted or arrested under Public Safety Act or Prevention of Unlawful Activities. Extrajudicial and custodial killings, physical and psychological abuse of women, men, old, young, and children became a new normal. On the evaluation of the situation, Professor Gregory Stanton, the founder of Genocide Watch, issued the Genocide Emergency Alert for IOUJK, stating that the current state of persecution of Kashmiris could lead to extermination, followed by the full-fledged genocide. It is alarming that Professor Stanton has now, in January 2022, issued the genocide alert for the Muslims of entire India. Professor Gregory Stanton has mentioned that numerous extremist right-wing religious leaders and organizations have made calls for exterminating Muslims from India, their social and economic boycott. No credible action has been taken against these leaders and organizations for their hate speeches and clear incitement to violence despite strong laws existing in India. Ironically, such laws are used against Muslims for merely using uh, something that the government does not like and making it a tweet. So, to deprive Muslims of their cultural identity in Kashmir, requirement of knowledge of Urdu language is being removed for various government jobs, even though all the main revenue records and land records in Kashmir have been maintained in Urdu for centuries. The Human Rights Watch, in its report for the year 2022, issued in year 2022 for the year 2021, has highlighted abuse of draconian laws against minorities, particularly Muslims, growing number of mob attacks, lynching with impunity under BJP-led government. Human Rights Watch has particularly drawn attention towards harassment and arrest of Kashmiri journalists on terrorism charges under Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, UPA. Independent organizations of editors, researchers, and writers, the Police Project of India, has carried out a detailed report on harassment, intimidation, arrest, persecution, and torture against journalists and media outlets in IIOJK. The new media regulations issued by the occupation government following 5th August 2019 gave sweeping authority to administration, police, and security forces to register sedition, terrorism, defamation, and fake charges of supporting militancy against the journalists. A single tweet, Facebook post, or a news report giving facts differently from the government's cover up versions could be enough reason for the authorities to register a case under Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. India's Press Freedom Report 2021 by the Rights and Risk Analysis Group, released this month, has revealed that at least 6 journalists were killed in 2021, and 121 journalists and media houses were targeted in India last year. The highest number of media targeting incidents of 25 were in IIOJK. It is believed that the report still gives a conservative estimate for Kashmir, as actual numbers are much higher. Last month, Indian security forces brought under their cover a group of journalists known to be close to the occupying administration to forcibly take over the Kashmir Press Club. The club had been defunct for the last 6 months, and the administration did not allow holding of new elections. A joint statement by all 9 media associations in IIOJK condemned the administration's move to arbitrarily hand over Kashmir Press Club to the unelected representatives. Earlier in November 2021, Srinagar Press Enclave was evacuated, cancelling allotment letters to media houses to stifle press freedom. Women journalists in Kashmir are worst affected, utilizing immunity granted under Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Security personnel routinely abuse and even molest female journalists, dissuading them from performing their professional duties. Kuratullah Haider was forced to drop a story on Kashmiri women's booked under Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Earlier, she was called to the police station and threatened for criminal prosecution for filing a report of police torture of the shopkeepers who were protesting in IOJK in Srinagar. There are several more incidents of targeting media and journalists, and I can separately share more details with those who are interested. Last month, a London-based firm, Stockwhite, has filed an application with the British police to register a case against the Indian Army Chief, General Manoj Narwan, and Home Minister Amit Shah for torture, kidnapping, and killings of Kashmiri activists and journalists and civilians. Ms. Mashal Malik has already spoken about this report, so I will not go into too much details of that. The restrictions on delimitation of electoral constituencies has also been removed in IOUJK. Because of this, 6 new seats have been allocated to the Jammu region, whereas only 1 granted to Valley, even though the population of Valley is more than Jammu. These, coupled with the grant of domicile certificates to the Indian citizens belonging to various Indian states, is making major demographic changes in Kashmir. It is reported that now 4.2 million Indians have been granted citizenship in Indian illegally occupied Kashmir, and this is a major change considering that the total population of Kashmir is about 8 to 9 million. So half or close to half of the population of the IIOJK has been added to the population, and with those who are not actually the residents of Jammu and Kashmir. I would also like to draw attention to one major propaganda made by India about the genocide of Hindu Pandits in Kashmir during 1990s, the myth of which has been broken by undeniable evidence provided by the Indian government sources themselves. In response to a right to information request, the police headquarters in Srinagar have informed that 89 Pandits were killed from 1990s to date in violent attacks. According to another report of IIOJK police, 89 cases of Pandits killing were registered, while it is estimated that a total of 214 Pandits may have been killed in violent attacks between 1990 to date. An Australian independent investigative journalist, C.J. Wellman, believes that the myth of Kashmiri Pandit genocide is employed by India as a propaganda device. Significantly, how can one compare the death of at the most a couple of 100 Pandits with close to 100,000 Kashmiri Muslims who have been killed by security forces? Two prominent Kashmiri Pandit scholars, Natasha Cole and Nishita Trishal, also believe that Indian government, particularly BJP RSS regime, uses Kashmir Pandit card to give communal color to justify their injustices that Kashmiris suffer at their hands. As an occupying authority, it was India's responsibility to ensure life and liberty of both Pandits and Kashmiris. and they cannot shift the blame elsewhere. The grave situation in Jammu and Kashmir, as well as its implications on regional and global uh, dynamics, have not gone unnoticed by the international community. The United Nations Security Council has discussed the Kashmir issue thrice since the 5th August 2019 illegal actions by India. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has last month reiterated the position of UN on the region of Jammu and Kashmir is governed by the UN Charter and applicable UN Security Council resolutions. He urged India and Pakistan to come together to resolve Kashmir dispute, emphasizing that any military confrontation would be a disaster of unmitigated proportions for both the countries and the whole world. Uh, the Secretary General, this is the third time since 2019 the Secretary General has reiterated his position about the validity of UN Security Council resolutions on Kashmir. And at the same time, he has offered his good offices for any mediation and possibility of reaching a solution between both India and Pakistan. However, unfortunately, every time the Indians have very arrogantly uh, refused to acknowledge the offer of mediation made by the Secretary General. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to emphasize that there is a clear need for much stronger proactive engagement of international community in resolving this long-standing dispute on the agenda of United Nations. Keeping silent or paying lip service to the need for maintaining tranquility, peace, and security is for aggressive kinetic options. The situation is rife with miscalculation and over-adventurism from the Indian side. The demonstration of this was seen in February 2019 that resulted in an Indian aircraft being shot over Pakistani territory and capture of its pilot. It required a great magnanimity from Pakistani side to return the Indian pilot, giving peace another chance. The Indian political leadership and vicious media continues to harp on the further escalation with the notions such as surgical strike and giving veiled nuclear threats by questioning their own no first use nuclear doctrine. Under such circumstances, it is incumbent upon the international community and global leaders to come forth to resolve this issue according to the wishes of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. The Pacific resolution of Jammu and Kashmir dispute is in the larger interest of the world and is not mutually exclusive to the country's economic, perceived, and economic and strategically perceived interests. Norway, we believe, should keep its high moral ground and preeminence with commitment to uphold human rights globally. We need to enhance our outreach to the Norwegian civil society, think tank, media, and political parties. We would request Norway to utilize its presence in the Security Council during the year 2022 to raise the voice for Kashmir. The more awareness of real Kashmir issue is created, the more people would come to its support. And we are quite optimistic that once the global opinion is favorably shaped in favor of Kashmir, a solution of this can be reached pacifically. For India, I would say that their belligerence, intransigence, and disregard for rights of minorities and marginalized community has not been without cause. Today, the world is taking note of their communal cause of extermination of religious minorities, bigotry of not allowing them religious freedom, as well as this socio-economic boycott being done. It would bid well for both India and Pakistan to resolve Kashmir and other issues amicably and cooperate in economic and trade matters, as well as enhance people to people interaction, establishing mutually beneficial peace, progress, and prosperity. Thank you. I would like to apologize. I accidentally skipped Mr. Guy Lipset of Central Party. I'm very grateful to him, especially his deep commitment that he will include Kashmir in the agenda of his party, and it will be one of the most important matter that his party will campaign during its election and also during its party's program. So thank you very much, Mr. Guy Lipstein, and my apologies once again. If there are any questions to the speakers or myself, I will be most happy to answer. Or if somebody else would like to make any comments.
The floor is open, please, for all the guest participants present here and those who are joining virtually for any remarks, observation, or question, if any. You're most welcome to. Do we have anyone who's joining virtually who want to question or make any remarks?
Your Excellency.
Yes,
Your Excellency.
Mr. Akhtar Chaudhary.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes,
thank you
please.
very much for a wonderful seminar. I see two MPs. One is leaving. Before you leave through that, I would say one single thing. I see two MPs, and it's wonderful to see you two here from two different parties and from the largest parties in the parliament. It's a good sign. I would say 2-3 things. First of all, the suggestions which Ms. Malik did, we should look into those. Very serious and very straightforward suggestions which the community should look into. That is the first thing. The second thing is what we could do from the Norwegian Parliament. I would suggest 3 things. First of all, you two, the MPs sitting there, try to revive the Kashmir Committee. It was a committee which worked on Kashmir issue for many years. You two and many others, once again, to try to revive this committee. It could be a platform to take up the Kashmir issue and the relevant issues in the parliament. Secondly, take the issue up with the foreign minister on the floor of the parliament. This is, as you yourself have said, very important issue. It's an issue between two atomic nations, and most of all, and the worst of all, is that it is the matter of human rights. 9 million people living sieged by their own forces. If India says that these 9 million people are a part of India, then it's even worse that these people have been deprived their own basic human rights. So I believe that this should be taken up with the Minister of Foreign Affairs on the floor of the Parliament. And lastly, I would say that if you revive the committee, Kashmir Committee, it would and it should make connections with the people living in Indian-controlled Kashmir, like people like Ms. Malik. I know there are many people who have been arrested there. The leaders, the Kashmiri leaders who have been arrested, those are on the list of Amnesty International and many other human rights organizations in Norway. We could provide connection to those organizations and the names of those people. I would urge you two MPs and many others to take these names, particular individual names, up with the foreign minister and ask her to take it up with the Indian government. So these would be the 3 very concrete things. I thank you very much that you two came to the seminar. It's a good sign. Thank you very much.
Message taken, Akhtar.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akhtar Chaudhary. Do we have any other questions? Okay, so with this, we reach to the end of this seminar. I thank you once again for taking our time and joining us to express solidarity with the people of Jammu and Kashmir. We have arranged some refreshments for all of the guests, so you're please welcome to proceed.